Hello, my name is Sonia Outlaw Clark, and I'm here in the Music Museum of the West Tennessee Delta Heritage Center. I'm here today with a local go-to person when it comes to the music history and heritage of Brownsville and Haywood County, Tennessee. Mr. Jerry Wilson, thank you for being here today.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Tell me, how did you first become interested in the music industry?
Well, Sonia, I don't know that I can recall a time in my life when lights went off and I said to myself, this is the industry I want to become a part of, because it was always a part of my life. It was just like the very air we breathe. You know, when I grew up, well, you just think about it from birth. You know how mamas used to get their babies to take a nap?
How?
Put them in the old rocking chair and rock them to sleep, singing Rock of Ages or What a Friend. So you look, all those years you're influenced by their singing to you. And then, of course, you know, it's in school, in church, everywhere music was a part of what we were. And later on, we may can get in on this a little. I think one of my greatest inspirations, probably, I didn't know at the time, was the inspiration of black music and the blues in my life. Because I grew up surrounded by blues music that just came natural. And we can talk about that later. So it's difficult to say. Now, over the years it developed, and I developed a love of music and the profession, and so it developed and it grew and kind of reshaped. There were times in my life when maybe I decided this is the route I want to go.
So you did, at one time, you did perform, but then you kind of turned around a little bit and went in a different direction as far as the industry is concerned.
Well, I started out touring, okay? And here, you know, we used to have parties. We'd go to dances, you know, the community dance, because we didn't have nothing else to do back then. And somebody that could play a guitar or fiddle and do a little hoedown. We'd go to neighbors' houses. As we got a little older, the girls would get their 45s and their phonograph record, you know, and all, and we'd play them and have a weekend dance. So that's basically where it was. And then shortly after school, I toured for about 3 or 4 years or 5. And then I decided, you know, you're going to have to be on the road all the time. And family and being at home was meaning a lot to me at that time. So later on, when my daughter was born, I said, it's time to get rid of this. I had made a pretty good move into, you know, DJ. I wanted to stay in music. So I thought, hey, behind the scenes, that's a good place to be. So then I went over into the radio aspect of it.
So what were some of those local musical influences?
You know, when I was performing, I was not a musician. I didn't play an instrument. That was a handicap. Didn't know anything about a guitar. Didn't hardly know how to pick it up or could put a string on it. And there was a guy in the community, I remember watching Your Cheating Heart back years ago with Hank Williams, and he had his T-Tot, his black friend that, you know, taught him all of this. So we had one in the community that could play guitar. And he sat down and worked with me and taught me. See, it helped to be able to play, to be sure that you could start in the right key, that you knew how to chord and get good timing. And the guitar helped. And that's basically why I learned that. His name was Chess Haynes. I won't never forget him. And he was so patient. And I think a lot of my style probably came from him. Later on, there'd be other influences, but not so much locally.
Well, I remember you telling a story about an encounter you had with Sleepy John Estes.
Yeah, and that is really interesting. When I graduated from high school, I went to work for Man's Grocery. It's out on Highway 19, you know, between here and Nutbush. And one afternoon, I hadn't been there long, and one afternoon, about late afternoon when they were getting ready to close, here comes this frail-looking black man with a son holding him by the arm, and he's coming to the store to get him, you know, some groceries. And so he hangs around a while. And as people began to leave and we began to close up the store, Sleepy John kept a guitar there. And he pulled the guitar out from behind the counter and sat there on the counter and entertained us till we got through and closed the stores. And at that time, I didn't know who he was. I mean, I knew it was Sleepy John, but I had no idea until years later just who he really was. And I wasn't I asked people, well, weren't you awe-stricken by that? And I said, no. You know, I had talked with you in some of our conversation about my experience in the cotton fields. Listen, I've never seen a black person that couldn't sing. I never have. And I've grown up in the cotton fields with them singing, and that's how I lived. I mean, I lived with blues songs and singing, and firsthand. So yeah, that was an encounter with him. And was that an influence? Probably. I think if I looked at, I could not rule out the influence of black gospel and the blues, because I grew up in that area. And I learned something that time. How it was a therapy. When things are going tough, when you don't think you can make the next step, then sing a song. So, so I did learn years later. I was in Memphis for something, and I went to the Center of Southern Folklore. Is that such a place? I think that was.
That's right.
And somewhere there was an article. And here he was, big as light, Sleepy John Estes. And I never knew, I promise you, I never knew that he was a Legacy. But, and this went on for several years. So those are some of the influences, mm-hmm. some of the situations that really take a hold of you.
Well, you were also one of the first employees for the local radio station.
FM came on in about 66 or the early part of 67. The AM probably came on maybe before Christmas or either in 65. And so there were some changes, believe me. That was an interesting time to be in radio. I went to radio. The only source we had for playing commercials was a reel-to-reel. So how do you cue a reel-to-reel, you know? And then you played with 45s and 78s. So that's where we were. Back then, I've had people to say, well, you have no trouble talking. Back then, we went to school in what we would call developing the gift of gab. Now, to explain that a little, you didn't want any dead airspace. Mm-hmm. You couldn't have, you couldn't be going out on the air and there you're trying to cue up a tape or cue up a record. So what we would do, sometimes to cue the tape, we would talk. And then we would get over there with our fingers, and cue it up and get us a little warning. So radio's gone a long way. Another thing, we did not have the advantages that they have today. It was crude. It was crude back then. Number one, you worked the hours. Radio wasn't interesting to too many people in those days, because if Christmas fell on a day that you didn't work, guess what? You worked on Christmas. There were no holidays. The radio had to broadcast sunrise to sunset 7 days a week. So it had to be on the air. Now if we need a little time off, we got automation. We can do that. On the CDs where you can push a button. You take, for instance, imagine yourself with a 78. A 78's the album. That's what we refer to as album. That's where you get the name album. Okay, it has, say, 10 songs on it. You want to play number 5. Well, you can't push a button and say number 5, so-and-so, and boom, it pops up. You got to be there with your fingers, and you have to cue it till you come to number 7. But radio has made probably a great advancement, because with sounds, they're unreal. They're just great. The technology continues to grow. Some of the things, though, about radio that have changed that I think is sad somewhat. In the days of early radio, even with the larger stations, the station was locally owned. A young artist out there trying to get started could go by, and all they had to do was just convince the owner or the music director or the disc jockey at that station, hey, play my song, give me a try. He could do it. He didn't have to wait till he got word from a music director 1,000 miles away or something like that. So, you hear stories like Loretta Lynn and others, how they made it. You could easily do it back then, but not now. Not now. It's so far advanced and so technical. But those are some of the ways it's changed.
Okay. You were also a founding member of the Tennessee Hayride that was here in Brownsville. Tell us what the Hayride was, about when it began, how long it lasted, and some of the musical greats that you saw come across the stage.
Well, it started, I think, in the spring of '65. The show was actually, I think it was kind of like copying the format of the Grand Ole Opry. Back then, they would have shows like the Grand Ole Opry, the Louisiana Hayride, where you had different bands coming on, and they'd come on for a 30-minute slot, and then another band would come on, and it'd start about 6 o'clock and go to midnight, very family oriented. And that's the way it was, and it started in '65. Best I can understand, it lasted about another 10 years. But the Tennessee Hayride was a fantastic show, I think. It was doing good, making great progress. Amazing being this close to Nashville. We were able to get a lot of country stars. And by then, in that time frame, people would know them. Loretta Lynn made several appearances on the Tennessee Hayride. And that was back, of course, in her younger days, as you might know. And then there was a group out of Nashville who they had a very popular weekly national television show, the Wilburn Brothers. They made several appearances there. And then one of I was thinking of another one, Jeannie Pruitt. Her signature song is Satin Sheets, if you ever remember that song. And she appeared on the show. And then we've had some stars to come there and go on and do well. In fact, there was a young girl back then. She was about 13 or 14 at the time, and her name was Kenny Husky. And she came down one night. Her mother and dad brought her. She was the performer, and they had their little trailer packed, and they did their performance, and they were heading out to California. And we stayed in touch with them for a while, and they ended up in Bakersfield because she wanted to tour with Buck Owens. And so eventually she did that. The show did well. What led to its demise? Well, I think a number of things happened. Many of the groups who came there as amateurs really enhanced their skills. And so as they would get better, they would move on. Well, also, we were booking national name acts in country. In fact, one of the guys had booked or had talked to him, Flatt and Scruggs, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, and then Carl Perkins was scheduled to come. But it was some people a little concerned. Now, this wasn't costing, it wasn't, the money wasn't the problem. But I think there was some feeling, well, if we end up having nothing but ours on here, it'll defeat our purpose in planning it, because we wanted something for the locals and the family to participate in. So any number of reasons finally led to its demise.
Well, you've talked a little bit about some of the changes in the music industry. What impact have you seen those changes have on our community?
Well, probably in our community, I think the greatest, really, in the music industry was the very fact that there was a man out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, that would be interested enough to apply to the Federal Communications Commission to operate a radio station in Brownsville, Tennessee. And he received the permit, Roy Davis, and he came to town. He didn't do it long distance. He actually left his home in Chattanooga, and he came down here and lived till he got that station, lived down here until he got that station going. So, and he also had the foresight to, when the opportunity came, to get an FM. Brownsville never did have a slot for an FM station. It had a slot for an AM station, but it didn't have a slot station. Well, Mr. Roy learned that Lauderdale County and Ripley had a slot, but they hadn't filed for it because it cost you a little money, to put that in. But they hadn't applied to the FCC. So he goes and applies, and lo and behold, he gets it. And so we didn't, it wasn't allotted to us in the beginning, but this showed something on his part. And it sold a couple of times, and I think what really sealed it in 1978, I believe, is when Brownsville Wireless, when the station was sold, it was sold to local owners who kept the station here. But I think that, well, imagine Brownsville without Brownsville Radio. I mean, sometimes, we get criticized pretty highly, but still, imagine it not being there. So I think that's probably been the greatest impact.
Well, as you look back, What do you wish you had accomplished that you haven't so far?
I tell young folks when I'm talking to them today, that they're their greatest limitation. That you can become whatever you want to be, good, bad, or indifferent. You want to be a professional singer, if you're willing to pay the price, you can be one. And yet in life, we only get the opportunity to do so much. I really honestly can't think of anything that I want to do that I didn't at least dabble in.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Not that I know of, only isn't this a lovely place?
It is. Yeah. Thank you for coming today.
One thing, Alex, it's a delight to be in the room here because, I graduated from high school right here at Haywood. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Remember one time, this is an Alec Harvey story. I was riding somewhere in another state listening to a big radio station. It was a major market. And so Delta Dawn comes on with Tanya Tucker. And the disc jockey is saying and telling the story and said that she was from Brownsville, Texas, that the story took place in Brownsville, Texas. I said, now hogwash, I know better than that. But I didn't call him. I didn't go on and call him. But then I checked on the internet, on Wikipedia, and I pulled up Alex, and it showed him as being born in Brownsville, Texas. And I said, that's where they got it. But of course, it's since changed. And I think Alex, folks like that, had an influence on us. Probably Tina Turner has had an influence on me. And you never know. I like to think that everyone's life we touch, we influence in some way or another. We may never know, or it may be later in life when we find out. So yeah, we're surrounded in an area where great musicians, great people have left a mark, and the legacy continues to build.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Delighted. Thank you very much.
Now I'm going back to Brownville, take that right-hand road. Now I'm going back to Brownville, take that right-hand road.
My name is Nancy Cates, and I'm at the Haywood Sports Museum in Brownsville, Tennessee. And my guest today is Dr. Robert Rooks, and he's going to tell us about the Sports Museum.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Robert Rooks, I practiced dentistry here in Brownsville, have for 34 years. What got my interest in sports? Well, I was fortunate enough in 1986 to have an opportunity to broadcast for Brownsville Radio, the Tomcat football games, play-by-play. Did that for 21 years. Well, not only knowing a little bit about football because I played football, my dad played football in 1941, so when I'm doing the radio, it is interesting not only for me, but the listeners on the radio to learn and relive some of the memories that we had years ago. So during those 21 years, I uncovered a lot of history. Then, 1996, we had an opportunity at the Haywood County Museum up here at College Hill where the old school was. We had one vacant room left. And we now, since 1996, have created what I think is one-of-a-kind museum room. There have been 18 sports that I know of that have been played in Haywood County. All 18 of those sports are represented in this room at least one time. Do they all relate to Haywood High School? No. This is a Haywood County museum. But most of these sports are currently or have been played at Haywood County High School. Now, behind me is just some of the hardware that has been represented over the years. One of the earliest trophies I have is a 1929 trophy that's actually in a case here. The basketball team that was captained by Floyd Dickinson, now Floyd Patton, she was the most valuable player. But the very first postseason trophy was 1951. The Haywood High Tomcats defeated Newbern 33-27 in the 4th annual Tiny Knee Bowl in Ripley. Well, that trophy's here. And what is really special, if you'll follow me to this trophy right here, the Big Ten Conference, which Brownsville was a member of, was organized in 1940. Well, for the next 29 years, that was a powerhouse conference in West Tennessee. Brownsville won that many, many times, and when the conference ended, the Tomcats won it in 1968. There's one of those trophies anywhere, and it's sitting right here. It's the rotating trophy for the Big Ten Conference Championship. Above the trophies, you'll see the coaches. This fall, 2011, the Haywood High School Tomcats will have played football for 100 years. There are 20 coaches represented there. The longest serving coach was John Hooper for 16 years, and shortly behind him, the very next coach was Rufus Lassiter. He coached for 15 years. You asked me what has been successful here. Well, football has been 100 years, highly successful. We rank 5th in the state in total number of wins, being 609. Basketball in the teens and into the 20s was played probably more on an outdoor court, and therefore you can imagine it was hit or miss year per year. But in 1927, the gymnasium, which is today currently the Ann Marks Performing Arts Center, became the gymnasium in 1927, and basketball picked up, and we've had some great teams there. In basketball, 1974 as well as 1978, we were runner-up in the state of Tennessee. We got to the championship, couldn't win. Football, same thing. 1994, 1995, state runner-ups, couldn't win, but have been runner-ups twice. We've got trophies here that represent both of those eras. We also have had a lot of success later. The first track that was ever here in Brownsville was built around the football stadium in 1965. We had track teams before that, but when they wanted to run track, they had to go to Tiny Knee Field and run on that cindered track that was put in Ripley in 1927. Only a handful of teams in West Tennessee have played football as long as Brownsville has. The Tomcats started in 1912, and on this wall behind me, during the existence of Haywood County High School, all of the teams are represented from 1912 all the way to 1970. Above them, as was customary especially in the 50s and 60s and 70s, sponsoring ads would have the schedules posted all around town. The Tomcats being so successful, if you look here, you see in 1963 we had a good run. And there's a black marker posted over the Ripley score because we didn't want to show it. 27-20, the victors were from Lauderdale County, not Haywood. But the Tomcat fans really have taken this sports seriously here. And one question could be, what has brought Haywood County together? What are the biggest moments in Haywood County? A lot of them have been sports. There's been rumors that if there were a fire on a Friday night during football season on an away game, the town would burn down. There wouldn't be enough people left in town to put the fire out. And that's true. A steady stream of tail lights would go to and from games, and many times the Haywood High Tomcats would have more fans there than visitors. Now you ask the question, where did you get the name Tomcat? Well, Tomcats, and we are the only Tomcat in the state of Tennessee, was actually a roundabout way from the name of the boys, men that were playing during that time. From 1912 to 1919, I'm pretty sure Haywood County High School was just that. Did not have a mascot name. But in 1920, the media began to reference Brownsville, the Haywood High School team, as the TOM Tom and CATS Cats. Because in 1920, 3 of the 5 Thomas brothers were playing football for Brownsville. Between 1919 and 1927, 5 brothers not only played, but captained and were some of the stars of the Haywood High football team. And the Thomas Cats became the Tomcats. And that's who we are today. And you won't find another one in the state of Tennessee. And our thought is that when you come to Brownsville and you're an opponent, you're in trouble, because just because these boys put on the purple and white, they've got a 3-point advantage on you already. The Haywood High football team has had 4 undefeated teams in their history. The 1957 was the very first one to go undefeated, and they also won the Big Ten Conference Championship. 1961, undefeated. 1968, undefeated. 1969, undefeated. During the 68-69 years, with a little bit of 67 and 70 added to it, Haywood County High School had a 29-game winning streak. And earlier in the 60s also had a 23-game winning streak. The Tomcat football team has played in 13 bowl games, winning 10. And in the case behind me is the original tripod and camera and the game film from the 1956 game that Alan King, the photographer and cameraman for Haywood High, filmed for 30 years. And because of that, the Tomcats got more successful, and then other teams in West Tennessee realized that by filming games you can learn much more, and everybody began filming as the late 50s came to be. Behind me also you see a collection of, in each jacket up top is a leather jacket or sweater, football or basketball. Every jacket or sweater is a different style. And below those, jerseys representing different eras as early as 1941 and as late as 1988. Looking at the scoreboard, and if you can make out the score, it says home 15, visitor 6. Well, if you substitute those words, it can very easily say Brownsville 15, Jackson 6. The reason that scoreboard is important, first of all, of course, it was the scoreboard at Memorial Field until Pepsi took over in the year 2000. But Coca-Cola sponsored the North End scoreboard for many years. Let's talk about some of the individuals that have made Haywood High School successful in sports. You might call this the Wall of Fame, and most of these individuals are represented here. It is interesting enough that, as I mentioned before, in the team sports, be it basketball and football, the Tomcats have never won a championship. But that's not so individual. In track, we can go back to 1962. Charles Christmas was the state champion in the 880 run. Then we come up to 1993, and Andrea Byers was the track champion in the 400-yard dash. And just a few years ago, Shanice Singleton won the high jump. It was 2006. She won the state high jump. So those three individuals were the best in the state in their years. Charles Christmas in 62, Andrea Byers in 93, and Shanice Singleton in 2006. Baseball. Well, we've had three individuals sign professional contracts. We had Tom Curry signed with the Detroit Tigers in 1926. We had Bill Whitehurst signed with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1961. We also had Baker Moore signed with the Springfield Capitals. They were in the Frontier League. He did that all the way back in 1997. So three of the better baseball players that came through Haywood County. Football, well, one of the bigger names has always been Rocky Felker. He was the Southeastern Conference Player of the Year in 1974. He was All-American here at Haywood High School, and later was offered a contract to play in the pros with the Cincinnati Bengals, but elected to coach, and he's the only person to ever leave Haywood County and later coach collegiately. He coached as a head coach at Mississippi State University and has been numerous places as an assistant coach. Also, and we've got a jersey up top here, the jersey number 56 from Virginia Tech. Well, in high school, Corey Moore was a real player, but at Virginia Tech, he stepped it up a notch, and he's been the only collegiate All-American to leave Haywood County and play in the college ranks, and he did that at Virginia Tech, garnishing 2 awards. The Nagurski Award, which says you're the best defensive player in the country, and he was also the best lineman in the country. And Corey did that in 1999 and also signed with the Buffalo Bills later. In basketball, we had one Carver graduate, Dwight Waller, who played for 2 years with the Atlanta Hawks. And we're going to journey over and talk about one of the premier athletes. And really, when you talk about Haywood County sports, the big name we talk about is Tony Delk. One of the bigger names that came out of Haywood County was Tony Delk. And as you look at the wall, you see, and Tony made this number popular, 00. Tony graduated from Haywood High School in 1992, went to the University of Kentucky, graduated in 1996. Had an opportunity with Tony, his Wildcat teammates, to go to the championship game in that 96 season. They were victorious, defeating Syracuse, winning the national championship. Who was the most valuable player in that game? Tony Delk. If you come to Brownsville today, you'll see at every major entrance coming into town a sign that says Brownsville, home of Tony Delk, and we proudly display those. Tony has been a great player. He led the state in scoring both his junior and senior year, played professionally, started with the Charlotte Hornets and ended with the Detroit Pistons in an 11-year career, then went to Greece for 1 year and came back, and he's currently in the 2011 season coaching at the University of Kentucky. Tony Delk has been such a nice ambassador to Brownsville and very generous also, that later he came back and donated money for the basketball team for chairs just like this that you see on the NBA floor. Well, speaking of Tony Delk and the football teams, well, the Haywood High Tomcats playing for 100 years. Well, we'd like to say 100 years of football, a century of success. We've done football and we've been a high school for 100 years. The way I see it, the best is yet to come. We still don't have a team championship. We've had many great athletes come through the school, and we've got greater opportunities. More sports are played today than they ever have been. And people from years ago, when you told them you were from Brownsville, the first thing they'd say, said, yes, you're that town that has that great such and such sports team. A lot of times it would be football or basketball, but they recognized Brownsville because of sports. And sports has been a glue, has been a pride, has been a collection of people from all walks, be it inside the town of Brownsville or in the county of Haywood, that we can recognize and be proud of. And I'm a proud participant in it, and want to keep this memory, these memories, and this memorabilia in front of everyone, because Haywood County is a great opportunity to participate in sports. And I hope one day that you'll come visit the Haywood County Museum and see for yourself.
Now I'm going back to Brownville, take that right hand road. Now I'm going back to Brownville, take that right.
My name is Lisa Carlton. I'm a member of the Weststar Class of 2011, Epitome of Excellence. And for my project, I have chosen Mr. Alan King. He is a fifth-generation farmer in Haywood County and a prominent figure for the town of Brownsville, and I appreciate him taking the time to speak with us.
All right, well, thank you, Lisa. I'm delighted that I could be of some assistance.
Please give us a brief overview of your career in the ag community in Haywood County.
Well, Lisa, I started out living on a farm, working as a farm boy, and I went to high school. I took agriculture, and I decided that I would go into, I'd be a VOAG teacher. So I went to Martin the first 2 years and then transferred on to Knoxville. They didn't have a VOAG degree at Martin, so I transferred on to Knoxville, and I got a VOAG degree from the University of Tennessee in 1955. I came back and started teaching in the high school. So I've really been involved with agriculture all my life, and other than the teaching part and the farming part. So.
How were you involved in Haywood County?
Well, when my father died in 1956, I was elected to the county commission. And I've been a county commissioner since 1956. I'm in my 56th year as a county commissioner. It's the longest active term in the state of Tennessee. But in doing so, I'm chairman of the Budget Committee. I'm chairman pro tem of the court. And on 2 different occasions, I have had to serve as county mayor when Franklin Smith stepped down and when John Sharp stepped down. I had to take over until the county selected a new mayor. So I've been involved in the politics and operations of Haywood County, and like I said, I'm chairman of the Budget Committee. It's been 56 years I've been on that court.
What crops are produced in Haywood County?
The #1 crop in Haywood County all my life has been cotton. Everything, cotton was number one. You put the cotton on the best land you had, and it received more attention than anything else you worked because it was the number one cash crop in Haywood County. And then about in the mid 90s, we were approached by the APHIS to introduce the boll weevil program into the state of Tennessee. So I was selected on a committee representing it, and we went to Nashville, and we got the legislature to enact the legislation authorizing the boll weevil program. But we had to do that. You had to do that because it was a mandatory charge on to the farmers. And this program has progressed from North Carolina on westward. As you move westward to try to eradicate the weevil. And in the process of eradicating the weevil, you had to come in. We did a lot of spraying there for 2 years, and basically we got the weevil eradicated in about 5 years. Tennessee was divided into 3 districts. We happened to be in the middle district. The south district was Fayette County and down in there. We pushed this program through because the boll weevil, it was hard to make a top crop. In top crop, I'm going to talk about the top part of the stalk. The boll weevils would overwinter, and then they'd start and they build up on during the year. And then as you got into the summertime, well, the before you went into summertime, the more weevils you had, and we had to spray and spray and spray. So the eradicating of the boll weevil, not only was it helpful to the production of cotton, but it also cut down. We cut down on the amount of insecticide used about 85% whenever we got the weevil eradicated. So actually the boll weevil eradication was probably the biggest one factor that's involved the cotton industry in my lifetime. Now, of course, the development of the gin back earlier and so forth was one major factor. The pre-merges. When I remember when it came out with the first what they call pre-merge. We sprayed behind the cotton to kill the grass and the weeds and stuff. Remember when that first came? That was a big factor that in cotton production. But the number one thing to help the farmers has been the boll weevil eradication.
Outside of cotton, what are some other leading crops produced in Haywood County?
Haywood County, being where it's located, is very diversified in farming. We are very fortunate that the climate and the soils that we got, that we can produce corn, excellent corn yields. We can produce soybeans. We can have wheat. We can double crop beans behind wheat, and all of those things are fundamental to agriculture in Haywood County. And we are very fortunate that Haywood County has got the soil and the climate that we can do these things. I would say right now probably the number two crop in Haywood County behind cotton would be acres and soybeans. Soybeans are probably more acres. The number 2 value crop is probably corn behind cotton. And these prices vary from year to year, so the farmers he can adjust depending upon what the price of a product is. One of the most favorable things right now is the production of no-till corn. And corn is one thing that puts a tremendous lot of residue back on top of the ground. If you're no-tilling and you got all the residue on top of the ground and you happen to build up organic matter and you happen to increase the yields, you go to a wheat-bean rotation. And most everybody around, we are fortunate that where we are, we can double crop all our wheat with beans. And in the process, we no-till those beans behind. You got all of that residue on top of the ground. That residue on top of the ground is going to help you the next year. Back in February of this year, we were really concerned because we did not have any subsoil moisture. We got all that floods in May of last year, and then it didn't rain. And we did not, you go down, there was no subsoil moisture. Right now, with these rains, folks will say, oh, y'all are getting behind. Well, yeah, we're a little bit behind, but we're not, with the varieties that we got, we're not behind. Basically, we can go in there and plant a crop now. We got subsoil moisture. We can help that crop get started. But Haywood County is fortunate in the fact that with all of those other crops, used to be the number 1 acreage in Haywood County was cattle, was pasture. And the number 2 thing on the farm was cotton. But now those things have changed because of the amount of income and equipment and so forth. And it's made it, right now, I would say probably number 1 crop is cotton, and the number 2 crop would be corn, and you got beans and wheat coming down the line. I don't know of any other specialty crops that's produced much in Haywood County other than those primary ones.
Please explain the changes in farming over the last several years.
Well, from the time as I was a little boy, they used to let me plow the mule, and then we got tractors, and then as we progressed on with tractors got bigger, technology increased, and then the one major item, in my opinion, that has helped agriculture in West Tennessee is the fact that we came in with no-till. Haywood County, the soils of West Tennessee are what you call a windblown, a low-S windblown soil. They blew into this area over the centuries and formed it. They did not form in place here. They were blown in here, and in the process, they are highly erodible. So if we came in with the no-till program, then we're able to hold the soil in place. It does not you keep your residue on top of the ground. We do exactly the same thing that the ladies do around the house, around mulching the flower beds and so forth. We keep mulch on top of the ground, and therefore the water will penetrate it, and it just doesn't wash off. You hold your fertilization. Number one thing is you build up your organic matter. As you build up the organic matter over the years, then the soil becomes more productive, and you keep from losing the topsoil. That's the key to the whole thing. Haywood County was eroding a tremendous amount of topsoil. We'd get a big rain, farm would break the ground, leaving all that ground open. Rain wash, you see gullies across, you see mud across the road, and the ditches would be full of mud and dirt come out. All of that's topsoil. So with the no-till, it really started helping the yields, and it's just a tremendous change in agriculture. Plus the fact that now the tractors and the combines thing beyond me. They got computers and they got all of those things, a GPS system on them now that we didn't have anything like that when I first started farming. But all of it is technology, and that has helped the farmer, and it's helped production.
How many gens do we have?
I think we're down to probably about maybe 5 or 6 maybe. At one time we had 8 or 10. But ginning has changed tremendously from what it used to be. The gins now, as you see those 2 bales back there, you see the old bale of cotton and you see the new bale of cotton. And they used to have to send that old bale of cotton to the compress to get it squeezed down to what the size is on the new bale of cotton. And the UD presses in the gin are what did that. That's technology. Everything is just increased and changed. And you just got to flow with the time if you're going to be successful.
If you could leave one message to the future farmers in Haywood County, what would it be?
The one message I would say is that take care of your soil. Take care of the land. If you'll take care of the land, as Judge Gray told me a long time ago when I was swapping a farm, he said, son, let me tell you something. He says, this land doesn't belong to you. It didn't belong to your ancestors. It was here before they were here. It was here before you were here. And it's your ward to take care of it. You're going to have to be accountable someday if you don't take care of what you got. Not only is it going to benefit or harm your future generations, your children and grandchildren, but you have got to take care of this land. It's your responsibility to take care of it and see to it that it does not wash away and it's not run down and so forth. He said that is a ward of every farmer that's farming. He needs to take care of his land.
Describe to us your philosophy on being a successful farmer.
My philosophy on being a successful farmer is, okay, you need to keep up with the technology that's being produced every day. And the best way to keep up with the technology, not only the fact that I'm UT's ag representative, but the University of Tennessee Experiment Station, they keep up with all the different chemicals, they keep up with all the different varieties, they keep up with methods and techniques, and the information that you get from them is an unbiased information. A chemical company is going to tell you, my chemical is the best. A seed company is going to tell you, my seed is the best. But it's their job to evaluate all of this and bring it back to the everyday farmer. And to keep up, if you don't keep up with that, you got to stay abreast of what's going on if you're going to be successful. Because if you don't stay abreast of what's going on, the next man of it is going to go off and leave you. So that, to me, that would be, I would say, would be one of the most important things.
Lastly, how do you want to be remembered?
I would want to be remembered as the fact that I consider I have been a servant in Haywood County. I've been a servant of agriculture. I've served in the county, on the county court. I've helped try to keep everything in a workable situation, and I would like to be remembered as somebody that helped preserve the land and helped to enhance agriculture.
Now I'm going back to Brown.